Laura Ashworth, 31 years young. My folks just dropped a bombshell. I either foot the bill for my sister's wedding or get erased from their world for good. Yeah, you got it spot on. They hit me with that demand smack in the middle of Sunday supper, right at my dining table in my place, the home I've been covering the mortgage for while they've crashed here the past 3 years. Madison was planted there with her signature smirk, the one she's flashed since we were kids whenever she scored something I missed out on. That grin, screaming, "No big deal, I come out on top once more." But hold up, let me backtrack and explain how we ended up in this mess. My parents crashed at my spot 3 years back when Dad, Mr. Ashworth, got canned from his high-end accounting gig downtown. They swore it'd be short-term. Yeah, short-term like a root canal, huh? They rolled in with a couple of bags and somehow revamped my whole living room using their dusty old stuff. Mom, Mrs. Ashworth, dove straight into reorganizing my kitchen shelves, insisting it was all about better organization. Meanwhile, Dad commandeered the home office for his job hunt, which mostly meant binging YouTube clips on golf swings all day long. Just to clarify, at 31, I've been grinding at work since I was 16. I scraped together college cash through scholarships and juggling 3 part-time gigs. I wrapped up law school at 25, buried under a ton of loans, and then poured the next 6 years into launching my own law firm. When I landed that senior associate title 2 years ago, I figured I'd hit a solid groove at last. Nope. The warning signs kicked off when they handed over my master bedroom to Madison. My master bedroom of all things. "She requires extra room for her belongings," Mom chirped as I stood frozen, clutching my laundry hamper. I got shuffled into the old guest room, crashing on a single bed I'd snagged for out-of-town pals. But come on, I'm a lawyer. I can roll with punches, yeah, fat chance. Expenses skyrocketed from day one. My power bill shot up 3-fold because apparently the place had to stay a brisk 72-degree nonstop. My food costs ballooned since Dad got hooked on all organic eats, and Mom reinvented herself as a fancy cook. When I mentioned the added strain, she just squeezed my hand and cooed, "Sweetie, family looks out for each other. You get it, right?" Oh, I got it, all right. Crystal clear that I was bankrolling their golden years while they bossed me around like staff in my own pad. Madison would ditch her grimy outfits in the washer for days till they grew fuzzy, then gripe if I shifted them. Dad borrowed my ride without a heads up, dumping it back with zilch in the tank and weird spots on the upholstery. Any chat about simple household guidelines. They'd swap those eye rolls, the kind implying, "Ah, fragile Laura's stirring trouble once more." The tension had been simmering for months. Stepping into my own home felt like intruding, like all my sweat, my achievements, everything I'd hustled for was up for grabs by others. But that ultimatum evening, I realized the charade had to end. I rose from the table cool as ice, inhaling deeply, like prepping for a courtroom showdown. My parents stared, jaws slack, stunned that pushback was actually happening. Madison naturally kept that goofy grin, treating it like playground antics. "Listen," I started, voice level but firm, no shouting. "If this is your idea of family, count me out. I'll vanish. I'm 31, hustled since 16, covered my own tuition, clawed through law school amid huge debts, and carved out my path while you squatted rent-free in my house for 3 years. And now this. Shell out for Madison's big day or get banished. Newsflash, I don't require your okay to run my world anymore." Dad's mouth flapped open, but nothing escaped. Mom scowled, and Madison's eyes finally widened, like her cozy power trip was cracking. I laid it all out, the ways I'd funded their perks, the car loans and item grabs, how my siblings soaked up perks I'd sweated for, the mounting tabs, the AC blasts I covered, the upscale meals I never signed up for, every concession I'd made for their ease. "Enough," I declared. "My world, my grind, my cash, it's all mine. Take whatever. But I'm done with this mistreatment. Clear out in 24 hours. I've hung in there, played nice, aimed to be the ideal kid, but that's history. Dead quiet hit. No shouts, no retorts, just the clock's steady tick as a massive burden eased off me." Madison's smirk faded. Maybe, just maybe, She grasped that life's wins don't always come from scheming or crocodile tears. That evening, I hit the hay in my actual bed, my space, sensing true ownership for the first time in ages. Come morning, as I stirred awake, I sensed things could shift, that I could build. I had drawn firm lines to safeguard my own well-being. Even though I couldn't predict my parents' next move or how Madison might respond, a profound shift had occurred within me. I wasn't playing the role of the sufferer anymore. I escaped that cage. I refused to be under their control any longer. Each bill I settled revealed how expenses had skyrocketed, draining my savings before I even realized it. Whenever folks referred to our home about the place I'd bought myself, I recalled the upbringing that drilled into me. Family above all, prosperous folks support the rest, and challenging the household setup labeled you as self-centered. The breaking point hit last month when I learned they'd been spreading tales that I was in money troubles, and they'd stepped in to rescue me. Rescue me. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, mentioned how touching it was that my folks were backing me through tough patches. I nearly sputtered on my coffee. "Excuse me, come again," I managed, forcing composure. I eased into a seat, placing my fork down deliberately, my legal expertise snapping into gear. Inhale deeply, keep steady, collect details, hold back until it's time to act. "Regarding the ceremony," Mom continued, piling more potatoes on her plate like she hadn't just proposed I bankroll my siblings' dream event. "We figured $28,000 will handle it all. The location, blooms, gown, and snapper." Madison had picked the loveliest venue in Napa Valley. Napa Valley, naturally, since anything nearby wouldn't suit Her Highness Madison. I stared at her as she inspected her polished nails like her whole joy hinged on them, while I perched at my own dining spot, baffled at how I'd arrived here. "That's quite a sum," I noted cautiously. "It's a commitment to the clan," Dad countered, echoing the pitch that lured me into hosting them just for a bit 3 years back. "Madison weds only once. Let's make it special," they insisted. Truth be told, this marked Madison's second betrothal. The prior one fizzled because her intended lacked drive. But who's keeping score? Not my parents, who'd raided my education savings for Madison's European adventure while I juggled 3 gigs to cover my schooling. For weeks, a nagging unease had built up. Our family setup felt deeply flawed. It began subtly, chats centering on Madison's demands, my wins dismissed with a quick pat before circling back to her chaos. I'd been seeing a therapist for 6 months, at last tackling decades of sidelining my own priorities for others. What if Madison and Tyler Dixon footed their own ceremony bill? I suggested mildly, aiming for logic, like typical grown-ups might. The air chilled by 20 degrees. Mom's grin turned into that fake, stiff expression like on store dummies. "Laura, that's just greedy," she snapped. There it hit. In my residence at my table, demanding equity and reason was branded a felony. My every utterance bounced off a barrier of denial and presumption. That's when it dawned on me, crystal clear. I'd never tolerate such treatment moving forward. I drew in air, reining in the rage to stay sharp. I met my parents' gazes head on, and after years, I owned the dialogue. "Greedy," I echoed deliberately, letting it hang in the air. "Do you grasp real greed? It's pouring my sweat-earned cash into another's fantasies while shaming me for seeking justice. That's greed." Dad parted his lips but stayed mute. Mom scowled, and Madison quit toying with her polish. Her charm lost its grip. The strain thickened, yet I held my ground stronger, each phrase landing like a strike against the wrongs I'd borne for so long. "Time to set the record straight," I pressed on. My tone stayed even, but carried a bite they couldn't dismiss. "I'm not funding your ceremony. I'm done bankrolling your caprices from my pocket. You've occupied this space for 3 years without a thought for my comfort, my funds, or my turf. No more." My mom tried to cut in, lips moving, but I halted her with a hand. Wait, no, hear me out. This isn't centered on you or Madison. It's my story. I labor, I battle. I crafted this dwelling, my profession, my world, and nobody gets to guilt me for guarding it anymore. Silence engulfed us utterly. Madison even let her napkin slip, at a loss for words. Dad shifted back in his seat, uneasy. Mom stared at the ground, lips tight, and I sensed liberation, like I'd finally inhaled without shackles. If my choice doesn't sit well, grab your bags and go. UH. I had just 24 hours to pull it off. This place is mine. My home, my existence, my guidelines. Nobody else gets to dictate terms around here, I declared, my tone steady and resolute, ensuring each syllable landed with impact. My sibling parted her lips, likely gearing up for an objection, but then clamped them shut. Perhaps, at long last, she grasped that not all victories in life stem from scheming, emotional coercion, or crocodile tears. My folks stayed silent, too, fully aware they couldn't compel me any longer. The reality lay exposed, and this time, I held the moral high ground. That evening, I drifted off to sleep in deep peace, free from remorse or dread, right there in my own bed, my own sanctuary. For the first time in ages, I truly sensed ownership over my surroundings, my schedule, and my destiny. And even though I couldn't predict my parents' next moves or how Madison might lash out come morning, a profound shift had occurred within me, irreversible. I was done being the prey. I was no longer ensnared. I didn't answer to them anymore. Starting then, I realized every choice I'd make from here would serve my own interests, not bend to their unreasonable demands. At last, liberty had an identity, and it was all mine. Tyler had freshly completed law school. He carried student debt. They were merely embarking on their journey together, just getting underway, huh? Tyler Dixon's family controlled nearly half the property market in San Francisco. But okay, let's act like he was some destitute soul scraping by. All the while, I'd been in just starting mode for 15 years, bankrolling my whole clan's way of living. What if I can't cover it? I probed, shifting tactics to avoid erupting. You'll figure it out, Dad replied, slicing into his steak with excessive vigor. That's how winners operate. They deliver results for the kin. Winners. I nearly burst out laughing. 3 years back, this so-called winner was jobless and on the brink of foreclosure until his kids stepped in to save the day. But hey, my relative's knack for cherry-picking memories ran deep. Madison at last lifted her gaze from her manicure. It's not as if you've got other uses for your cash, she remarked, offering that smug grin that's grated on me since childhood. No boyfriend, no vacations. All you do is grind away at work. At least this puts your funds to good use. Good use. 15 years juggling several gigs, 6 years crafting my path in law, existing like a hermit solely to prop up 3 grown-ups who saw me as a cash machine. And here was my sister, deeming my existence devoid of purpose. My counselor, Dr. Chen, had foreseen this clash. When you begin drawing lines, she'd explained, those who've thrived on your boundary-free ways will resist fiercely. Expect guilt trips, mind games, and threats to drag you back to the old dynamic. What if I refuse? I ventured, fighting to keep my composure. The ensuing quiet hung heavy in the air. Mom and Dad traded one of their signature glances, the kind that kicked off every major household call. Calls that, oddly enough, always sidelined my input. Dad cleared his throat as though pronouncing judgment. Then you're not the child we brought up, he concluded. Blood ties top everything, Laura. Everything. If that core value escapes you, perhaps it's time to reassess your real priorities. And if family matters that much, Mom chimed in, edging closer with her well-honed, fretful face, you'll go all out to make Madison's occasion unforgettable. This is a one-shot deal. One-shot deal, absolutely. Much like my youth, which they devoted to drilling in my spot on the family totem pole. Or my university commencement skipped over for Madison's racket match. There I sat, drawing in a steadying breath as waves of accumulated unfairness flashed through my mind. Each phrase, each motion, each ploy shouted that my existence wasn't theirs to claim, yet they anticipated I'd keep yielding to their every caprice like it was par for the course. I inhaled deeply and rose to my feet, unleashing the pent-up resentment and devotion of all those years through my words. I locked eyes with my parents, and for the first time, power flowed my way. "One-shot deal," I echoed, my voice soft yet unyielding. "Do you honestly believe it's just to demand I fund Madison's nuptials after all I've poured into this household? After 15 years toiling relentlessly to sustain the roof, your bills, your comforts, all while you lounged at ease and acted like I was a ghost." Dad's brow creased, and Mom's mouth tightened, both angling to seize the reins again. But I refused to yield. Madison's lips parted, ready to lecture me on true hardship, but I shut her down with a stare. No more of her barbs would pierce my conscience. "I'm done bankrolling your ceremony," I pressed on. "I'm through serving as the household dispenser. I won't tolerate my labor, my earnings, or my hours being dismissed as trivial. Every dollar I've scraped together has poured into constructing my future and propping you all up. And that's finished." A thick, oppressive quiet stretched out, the sort that screams more than any rant ever could. My father gazed up at the ceiling, his breaths coming in heavy gusts, while my mother dodged my gaze. Madison, oddly enough, looked diminished and exposed, like the illusion of her flawless existence was shattering before her eyes. "If you can't grasp it," I continued, my tone even, with just a faint quiver of feeling, "perhaps it's time you realize that limits are real, that existence doesn't orbit the desires of a select handful, and that I possess my own entitlements, aspirations, and desires too." At last, I lowered myself back into my seat, but now with chin up and no trace of dread. I sensed I'd carved a dividing line in our household dynamics. Things would never revert. They'd basked in ease on my dime for far too many years, and I'd resolved it was high time they discovered they couldn't claim ownership over my belongings anymore. That evening, stretched out in my bed, a peculiar yet freeing feeling washed over me. Dread, sure, but mingled with strength. For the first time, I truly comprehended the essence of owning my destiny. And while I couldn't predict my parents' response come morning or the fabrications Madison might spin, an inner shift had occurred irrevocably. I wasn't the prey any longer. I wasn't ensnared. Just like at every celebration, gathering, or milestone in my existence, some turmoil or festivity centered on my sibling always stole the spotlight from mine. It never varied. I might be chasing a vision or hitting a milestone, and abruptly, crash, everything pivoted back to her. That evening, I had them gathered in my very own eating area. My relatives, those same folks who'd trampled my territory and serenity, insisting I fund their ambitions while dismissing my own as trivial fancies. I glanced around at my home. The elegant glass fixture, which had drained half a year's wages from me, glowed over their eager expressions as though its radiance itself condemned them. The polished timber surfaces, which I'd smoothed and sealed personally, sparkled under their footwear. Those very souls that strode through my door like it was communal property. And amid the turmoil, Dr. Chen's words resonated in my mind, gentle yet resolute. You can't dictate others' responses to your limits. You can merely decide if you'll uphold them. I drew in a steadying inhale. "I have to mull this over," I declared at last. Madison flipped her eyes in exasperation, her pitch turning to that petulant drawl that historically bent everyone to her will. Mull it over. What's left to ponder? You either value the clan or you don't. You either wish for my joy or you're simply envious because I've snagged a partner who genuinely adores me. Envious. There it surfaced once more. That term, the tag they'd affixed to me throughout my years whenever I ventured to claim something personal. Envious when Madison claimed the primary sleeping quarters. Envious when she received a vehicle at 16 and I landed merely a side gig. Envious when our parents covered her tuition while I sank under loans for my own education. I'm not envious, I countered, my words quiet but resolute. I'm exhausted. My dad folded his limbs across his chest. Exhausted by what? By kin who cherish you, by folks who've given up so much on your behalf. That probe was like a match striking the tinder that had piled up within me for ages. The talks with Dr. Chen had unearthed plenty, and there, in their presence, it all erupted. What have you ever given up for me? I inquired deliberately, locking eyes with my dad. Quietude, drawn out and awkward. I watched them scramble for a retort, but none existed because the reality was stark. I'd been the sole giver. I'd forfeited my outings with friends to clock extra shifts. I'd let go of romances due to constant financial strain. I'd traded my inner calm merely to ensure their ease, contentment, and backing, as if I merited zilch reciprocally. We offered you shelter, my mother ventured eventually, shattering the hush. Shelter. I echoed deliberately, nearly chuckling at the absurdity. Within my residence, the one I cover entirely. Madison snorted derisively. Come on, spare us the theatrics. You're portraying us like a load to carry. And that's when clarity hit. That instant when the haze lifts from truth. When it all aligns and you perceive how you've veered off course, paddling desperately for everyone else's sake. I sat in my personal meal space, hearing my loved ones rationalize why my funds ought to be theirs, Doctor. Chen had readied me for this juncture in concept, but experiencing it firsthand was worlds apart. Grasping it abstractly differed from staring it down directly. I'll require a pause to reflect, I stated, and my delivery emerged serene, oddly detached. How long? Mom pressed with that edged inflection of one dreading a slip in authority. The location demands the initial payment. I'll inform you by morning, I responded while beginning to gather the plates. That routine motion abruptly seemed alien, as if I found myself crashing at a stranger's place that night, barely catching a wink of sleep. Whenever I shut my eyes, Madison's smug expression haunted me, and my father's harsh demand echoed relentlessly in my mind. By 5 a.m., I threw in the towel. I dragged myself out of bed, brewed some coffee, and gazed at the dawn filtering through those fresh windows, the ones I'd shelled out for myself. All around, from the furnishings to the walls, and every little touch screamed the results of my hard labor. Still, they acted like they could dictate what I did with it all. Grabbing my phone, I punched in Dr. Chen's urgent line, a move I'd never pulled before. "Laura," came her soothing, steady tone. "What's wrong?" I unloaded it all. The meal, the demand, the $28,000 they wanted from me. As the words poured out, I heard my own voice shift. It wasn't shaky or timid anymore. It rang out strong and resolute, like a woman who'd finally grasped she didn't have to shoulder the blame they'd dumped on her. The following morning, I rose with the sun, my thoughts still churning over the chaos. Rays poured in through the panes I'd selected and funded so thoughtfully. For the first time in ages, this home truly felt like mine. I fixed a cup of joe, settled at the kitchen table, and drew in a steadying breath. The confrontation loomed, and I was ready for it. Down in the dining area, my folks were munching on breakfast like the previous evening's blow-up never happened. Madison shot me a glance laced with shock and entitlement, waiting for me to cave, to slip back into my old role. But deep down, that compliant Laura was gone, shattered beyond repair. "I've mulled over your request," I started, my tone even and unwavering. "And no, that's my final word." Dad almost choked on his sip. "What was that?" He growled, brows knitting together. "I'm not covering Madison's wedding costs." I restated without flinching. I won't bankroll what's not my responsibility, and I refuse to keep funding this family while you treat my belongings as communal property. Mom edged closer, pulling out her classic dramatic worry act she'd perfected over the years. Laura, can't you see? This is about unity. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. For who exactly? I shot back pointedly. Madison, or you, so you can keep playing the big shot on my dime and sweat. Madison's jaw dropped, but words failed her. Surprise, bewilderment, a hint of dread flickered in her gaze. Dad scowled, folding his arms tightly. Mom stared, torn between denial and panic, yet I stayed composed. My limits were set in stone now, and I wouldn't budge. If you're staying under my roof, you follow my guidelines, I pressed on. These lines I draw aren't up for debate. My cash isn't yours to claim, nor is my time, vitality, or serenity. I've poured 15 years into propping up everyone here, and that ends now. The room fell deathly quiet. The weight of my declaration hung heavy, impossible to ignore. Madison bolted up in a rage, like her flawless bubble was bursting. You don't get to speak to me that way, she snapped. I'm family, your sister. True, you are, I replied, holding my ground coolly. But blood doesn't entitle you to drain my existence, my savings, or my calm. From this point forward, I'm prioritizing my own path, not indulging your demands. My parents fell silent after that. Madison retreated a step, and there, for the first time, I caught a spark of reluctant admiration in her eyes, tangled with unease. They realized the game had changed. No more twisting my emotions or leaning on threats. That morning, nursing my coffee as sunlight bathed my home, a rare sensation washed over me. Liberation. A surge of authority, command over my destiny. After so long, I was the central figure in my own tale, and everything had shifted irreversibly. How are you holding up? Dr. Chen probed. Furious, I admitted, yet liberated too. I'm seeing the reality at last. And what reality is that? She urged. It's exploitation, monetary control, psychological games, from a household that's always viewed me as nothing but a utility to mine. She paused thoughtfully. So, what's your next step? Get them out of my home. Then that's your path forward. I phoned in sick to the office and dedicated the morning to planning. I dug into rules for hosts and visitors, even though they were just extended stayers with minimal rights. I summoned a lock expert to swap the front locks. I scanned relocation services too, determined to cover all bases. Around 7:01 a.m., I rapped on Dad's door. He emerged in his bathrobe, irritation etched on his face. We have to discuss something, I announced. What now? He grumbled. You packing up and leaving today. His features twisted through shock, anger before landing on incredulity. You're joking, right? His tone quivered with frustration. You've got 24 hours to arrange elsewhere. Laura, this is ridiculous. We're blood. Blood? Mom didn't treat folks like a personal cash machine. She showed up in the corridor wearing that exaggerated expression of worry she always pulled out. What's happening here? She questioned. I'm telling you to pack up and leave by tomorrow evening. This has to do with the wedding funds, right? Madison cut in from her room. No, I'm evicting you because for 3 years you've crashed in my place without chipping in for bills and acted like my sole purpose was to wait on you hand and foot. The request for wedding cash was merely the breaking point. And where do we even go from here? Mom pressed. That's not my concern anymore, I answered steadily. You're grown-ups. Sort it out on your own. You have no right to boot us like this, Madison shouted. As a lawyer, I was well aware of their legal standing as extended visitors. Actually, I do, I stated resolutely, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Dad advanced a pace, his expression grave. If you follow through, there's no undoing it. You'll be picking cash over kin. Wrong, I replied, holding my tone even. You opted for money over family the moment you settled in and assumed my earnings were up for grabs by all. And this is insane, Madison shrieked, teetering on the edge of meltdown. You're tearing our family apart over funds. I'm not ruining a thing, I shot back. I'm shielding myself from those who've exploited my kindness for 3 full years. Kindness. Dad scoffed. We're your folks. We brought you up. We nourished you. We sheltered you for 18 years, and I've settled that score by offering shelter, meals, and monetary help for the past 3, I pointed out. The tabs cleared. Mom softened her tone, trying to bargain. Sweetie, are you bothered by the wedding stuff? We get it. Perhaps we could work out a deal. It's not the wedding at all, I clarified. It's about dignity. It's about limits. It's about simple equity. For 3 years, I've bankrolled 3 adults while getting dismissed like I was invisible in my own space. That's a lie, Mom objected. It absolutely is true, I retorted. When's the last time you checked in on me? When's the last time you recognized I grind 60 hours weekly to keep everyone afloat? When have you acted like this was my domain instead of some shared turf you claim as yours? Quiet fell. You've got 24 hours, I restated with authority. Come tomorrow night, I'll switch the locks, and if you're still here, I'll get the cops to haul you out for unlawful presence. You wouldn't have the nerve, Dad taunted. Madison began weeping. Genuine sobs now, Laura, come on, it's me. But remorse didn't hit me. All I sensed was the sharp focus I'd lacked before. At last, my home, my world, and my finances were mine to command. For the first time, I truly owned my existence. That morning hit hard. I observed them shuffling through the rooms, bewildered, offering justifications, scanning the space like their comfy setup was crumbling. Madison kept bawling, hiding her face in her palms as Mom strode to and fro, muttering about my heartlessness. Dad stayed planted in his chair, arms folded tight, like fate had abandoned him. What on earth now? Mom murmured under her breath. Now, I declared solidly, you figure out how to support yourselves. 3 years was plenty. As they clumsily gathered their belongings, pretending it was all routine, a sensation washed over me that I hadn't known in ages. Liberation. Each bag they hauled, each photo they removed, each bare shelf they abandoned signaled that my home was truly turning into my solitary haven. Madison gave me a final glare, blending fury and surrender. You can't pull this off, she attempted, but her words cracked. Oh, but you can, I responded evenly. Call it fairness, limits, and self-regard. Dad rose at last and released a deep, defeated exhale. Mom sank her face into her palms. I'd never experienced such strength. What had felt out of reach was suddenly tangible. I was safeguarding my existence. With the final bag out the door, I shut my eyes and drew in a long breath. The house echoed with stillness, a comforting quiet brimming with liberty and potential. For the first time in ages, I could roam my living area unburdened, free from intrusion, dread, or shame. It all belonged to me, crafted by my labor, my touch, my journey. That afternoon, I lounged on the couch with a mug of joe and grinned, not a shallow smirk, but one rooted in true serenity. I realized the journey wasn't finished, that tough moments, tangled feelings, and lingering recollections might resurface. Yet I also understood retreat was impossible. I'd drawn firm lines, guarded my territory, and prioritized my own needs after so long. Gazing around my space, every feature sparked to life. The polished wood floors catching the glow, the pieces I'd picked with intention, the panes allowing sunlight to flood and brighten my realm. All of it affirmed that my toil and endurance had paid off. And now, nobody could strip away what I'd earned. That evening, I drifted off to sleep deeply. No anxiety, no shame, no unreasonable requests, only tranquility. For the first time, I could envision a future without the nagging sense of disloyalty, because I'd come to realize that protecting my own boundaries wasn't a betrayal at all. It was about taking back control of my existence, my value, and my joy. Deep down, I sensed that everything had shifted irreversibly, and the existence I truly merited was now underway. I'm tying the knot, Madison announced, her voice quivering a bit. "This ought to be the most joyful period in my life." For an instant, that familiar pull of remorse surfaced, the impulse to comfort her, resolve her issues, play the dutiful sibling who always prioritizes others. But Dr. Chen's advice echoed in my mind. You can't ignite yourself just to provide warmth for everyone else. "Madison," I responded steadily, "you can absolutely enjoy a joyful ceremony. It simply can't come out of my nest egg." "But Tyler Dixon is counting on a proper event," she protested. "His folks have cash to spare. If we can't swing something respectable, they'll look down on us." That exposed the core issue. Madison felt ashamed of their money woes and figured I'd bail them out. "In that case, perhaps Tyler's relatives ought to cover it," I suggested resolutely. "No, it shouldn't fall on them, and it should on me," Madison insisted, with no rebuttal to offer. The afternoon dragged on as I observed their downward spiral. Phone calls to kin, desperate online hunts for housing, intense quarrels about blame. Nobody appeared to acknowledge that they might have engineered their own mess. As evening approached, Tyler Dixon showed up. From the window, I saw Madison dissolve into sobs against him. They lingered on the veranda for about 20 minutes in discussion before he departed, bewildered and annoyed. Madison re-entered with puffy eyes but a fresh resolve. "Tyler thinks we can delay the nuptials by a couple of months," she declared. "He'll discuss funding help with his parents." "That's a relief," I said. "Crisis averted." "Actually, no. The issue persists because you're still evicting us." Her tone sharpened. "That's correct," I confirmed. "But why?" she pressed, still in disbelief. "We've sorted the wedding now." I stared at her, amazed she hadn't grasped it yet. "Madison, this went way beyond the ceremony. The following day unfolded in a storm of familial chaos. Rings from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in ages, all probing why I was deserting my own. Aunt Patricia phoned thrice. Uncle Robert fired off an extended message on familial principles. Even my cherished grandmother rang to question if I'd gone insane. "Word is you're booting them over the wedding," she murmured gently. "It wasn't quite like that, Grandma." "So what was it really?" I laid out the full picture. The trio of years they'd crashed rent-free, the mounting bills, their zero input, capped by the ultimatum for matrimonial funds. "Oh dear," she breathed. I was clueless. Folks often spin tales to suit themselves. Their demands aren't fair at all. I'm so glad you're holding your ground. Her endorsement hit harder than I'd expected. As the family elder, my grandmother perceived the truth plainly, yet my parents and Madison pressed on relentlessly. Dad appealed to logic, citing the challenges of job hunting in his later years. Mom leaned on shame, invoking how my departed grandpa would feel let down. Madison swung from fury to weeping, even within single exchanges. "And now, where do we even turn?" Mom inquired yet again for the 10th go-round. "Options exist. Rentals, long-term lodgings, other family members," I pointed out. "Handle it on your own. Using which funds?" Dad challenged. "Dad, snag employment. Madison, do the same." Groundbreaking idea, huh? "You're just being heartless," Madison accused. "Actually, I'm being realistic," I shot back. "You're grown-ups who opted out of working since I enabled the freeloading." At 6 p.m. on Tuesday, precisely 24 hours post-deadline, they hadn't budged. Returning from my shift, I discovered them in the den amid suitcases, resembling displaced wanderers. "We require extra days," Dad pleaded. "That's 3 years you've already had," I stated unwaveringly. "Give us 7 more." "We've got leads on places," Madison pleaded. "Absolutely not," I interrupted. I fished out my cell and punched in 911. "What's that for?" Mom exclaimed in shock. "Summoning authorities to escort trespassers off my land." "You can't mean it," Madison uttered. "Just try me," I retorted. Before the call connected, Dad raised his palms. "Fine, we're leaving," he conceded. It dragged another couple of hours for them to gather their things. From the galley, tea in hand, I observed with an odd serenity washing over me. What could have been devastating instead seemed like shedding a massive burden. Mom was the final one out. She halted in the doorway, eyes brimming. "I wish you joy," she murmured. "I intend to find it," I assured her. Once they were gone, I toured my home solo for the initial time in 3 years. The quiet was exquisite. My domain, my guidelines, my serenity. I prepared a meal solely for me and savored it I could finally eat at my kitchen table all by myself. No objections to my preferences. I tuned into any TV show that caught my eye. No haggling required. Everything belonged wholly to me for the very first time. Now that the place was vacant, after years of constraint, I drew in breaths free from the sense of being scrutinized, criticized, or exploited. I wandered each space, running my hands along the walls, examining the surfaces, realizing that all the hard work I'd invested over time had truly paid off. Each feature, item, and recollection existed there solely because I'd selected them for my own sake, not to satisfy others. I chose to settle into the living room with a journal and ink, jotting notes on aspirations, visions, and intentions I'd shelved, while prioritizing everyone else's desires and requirements. At last, I sensed the power to shape my existence on my terms. Gone were the threats, pressures, or mind games, just serenity and boundless options ahead. That evening, I fixed a simple meal just for me, ignited some candles, played gentle tunes, and inhaled steadily. The home transformed into a haven rather than a cage for the first time. I realized perfection wouldn't arrive instantly, yet the liberty surging through me outweighed any ease they'd offered at the expense of my vitality. In the days that followed, I turned my attention inward. I picked up stalled legal endeavors. I carved out moments for my well-being, fitness, and authentic ambitions. With each passing day, I grew more resilient, assured, and certain of my worth. No longer could anyone siphon my vitality or finances. That realization sparked a self-assurance I'd never known. I even began pondering getaways, journeys delayed for ages, and ventures that would foster my development and solidify my autonomy. My choices required no one's sign-off anymore. Finally, my actions served only myself. The surge of strength was exhilarating. No room for remorse, coercion, or compelled adaptation. I recognized that the real kin worth cherishing weren't the ones who'd mistreated me, but those who honored and appreciated my essence. In that instant, it dawned on me that safeguarding my existence, health, and limits wasn't egoism. It was genuine care for myself. Strolling through the yard I'd nurtured for so long, I let the crisp breeze invigorate me. I acknowledged surviving a massive inner turmoil, yet I'd surfaced tougher, more aware, and unbound like never before. After years, I eased into my cherished seat, savored a warm tea, and grinned. It all was truly mine, my domain, my schedule, my calm, my world. As dusk fell, I felt utterly convinced I'd seized back the essentials, my liberty and serenity, and no soul could ever strip them away again. I let out a sharp, ironic chuckle when Sarah shared that with me. "Well," I shot back, "it looks like I've earned the title of family outcast now." "Don't let it get to you," she advised. "Folks like them fabricate tales to dodge owning up to their actions." Once I ended the call, I gazed upward at the ceiling, pondering how a falsehood gains traction as fact with endless retellings. Within weeks, the gossip took on a momentum of its own, that I'd evicted them to the curb, turned icy, let wealth corrupt me. Nobody recalled the endless concessions, the restless evenings fretting over bills, or the times I skipped meals so they could thrive. Occasionally, I'd consider reaching out to Madison to clarify once more how matters had spiraled, but her fake sobs and guilt trips flooded back, and I saw it was pointless. You can't debate with someone deaf to anything inconvenient. One afternoon, sipping coffee during a park stroll, I bumped into Clara, a former university pal. She mentioned spotting my folks crashing at a relative's and, per them, piecing themselves back together post the heartbreak I'd inflicted. "The heartbreak you inflicted." Clara echoed, arching a brow. I had no idea insisting on dignity and limits counted as assault. In my clan, apparently it does, I responded with a tired grin. Time marched on. My abode stayed spotless, hushed, and harmonious. I whipped up meals on a whim, binged my preferred series, and dozed through nights unburdened by the drain of 3 others sharing my space and sapping my spirit. Still, quiet spells brought waves of sorrow blended with gratitude. Sorrow for the ideal family I longed for but never had. Gratitude for summoning the resolve to break a toxic loop eroding my core. On a Sunday dawn, I made my way to see my grandmother, the sole voice affirming her pride in me. Her presence was what I craved. She welcomed me with her signature gentle beam and poured coffee alongside fresh pastries. "Sweetheart, rumors are swirling," she murmured, "but I see your true self. I understand the depths you offered before this stand. Guilt creeps in at times," I admitted, as if I gave up on tolerating it any longer. "No, dear," she responded resolutely. "You don't fail by growing weary of being taken advantage of. It's the one who exploits others' affection who truly fails." Her statement resonated deeply within me. For the first time, it seemed like someone grasped my situation without demanding every detail. I lingered there that afternoon, absorbing her tales, and it reminded me that not every branch of my family tree was poisonous. There remained genuine affection hidden in its depths. That evening, as I headed back to my place, I settled by the window with a glass of wine, gazing at the city's glow. The world appeared transformed, not flawless, but authentic. I realized my parents would keep bad-mouthing me. Madison would devise fresh tactics to play the martyr, and plenty of folks would still buy their narrative. Yet deep down, a shift had occurred. I no longer craved their validation. I stopped trying to defend my choices. I'd uncovered something far more precious than their endorsement, my inner liberation, and I recognized that no gossip could strip that away. Ultimately, it didn't matter if the world cast me as the antagonist in their tale. The reality was straightforward. For the first time ever, I had become the hero of my own serenity. The weeks that followed brought fresh revelations. Free from the endless obligation to satisfy everyone, I reconnected with my true self. After years, my schedule belonged to me alone. I savored leisurely breakfasts. I strolled the streets at my own pace, and I immersed myself in my legal work without constant disruptions from grievances or requests. I began prioritizing my own growth. I enrolled in photography courses, a passion sidelined since my university days. I dedicated whole afternoons to wandering with my camera in hand, snapping images of the evening sun's rays, the foliage, and the vitality I'd overlooked, while my parents and Madison drained my thoughts and finances. Every snapshot served as a cue that I now chose where to direct my focus and energy. I also revived old friendships that had faded. I linked up with Sarah and Clara multiple times weekly, exchanging chuckles and secrets. And for the first time, I sensed that family could be selected, not forced upon you. These friends backed me up, heard me out, and cheered my successes without expecting reciprocation. It was a nourishing form of connection I'd never known in my upbringing. In my career, my vitality shifted dramatically. I came across as more confident, more attentive. Clients picked up on my revitalized drive, and my coworkers praised the sharpness of my judgments. Jennifer remarked, "Laura, you look like a whole new you." She nailed it. That inner calm radiated into every corner of my job and daily existence. One afternoon, as I tidied my workspace, it hit me that I'd cleared out the overdue bills I'd delayed because of family obligations. Now, I could stash away money, schedule getaways, and indulge in minor treats that formerly felt out of reach. I even pondered relocating to a bigger space or refreshing my home to mirror just my tastes and aspirations. I reached a key insight, too. Setting limits wasn't about retribution. It was a method of safeguarding myself, and through that protection, I could at last relish my connections, my profession, and my days without the weight of remorse or dread. Each day reinforced that I'd made the wise choice. In the evenings, I'd occasionally perch on the couch in my living room, with the window ajar letting in the gentle air, reflecting on all I'd weathered. The tears that came weren't from sorrow, but from release. I knew I'd weathered years of coercion, and now I held the reins. Then an unforeseen development arose. My phone rang. It was Tyler Dixon. This time, his voice carried respect, free of apprehension. "Laura," he began, "I need to say sorry for not seeing it earlier. Madison shared her side, but I want to hear yours." I recounted my experience calmly and thoroughly from my viewpoint. Afterward, Tyler just noted, "Thanks for opening up to me. I'm happy you established your limits." For the first time, I believed I could foster positive bonds with those who honored my choices and appreciated my value. The ensuing days focused on renewal. I freshened up a few walls with paint, acquired fresh pieces for the rooms, and gradually, my living space evolved into a symbol of my self-reliance and resilience. No more shouting, no weeping, no impositions, just tranquility, joy, and the rhythm of the existence I'd embraced. At last, I grasped a vital truth. My joy wasn't tied to others. My welfare was absolute, and the autonomy I'd secured was undeniably my supreme accomplishment. For the first time surveying my home bathed in the soft glow of afternoon, I smiled sincerely. Not for accolades from the outside, but because I'd reclaimed my world, my safeguards, and my harmony. And that, I knew, was the ultimate win anyone could claim. "I'm sorry," I queried, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, I mean to apologize," she pressed on with that scheming grin I'd grown adept at deciphering, since from my earliest days, all the financial burdens, the home, and the chaos that unfolded weighed heavily on me. I let out a heavy sigh, aware that this conversation wouldn't unfold easily. Madison had always mastered the art of glossing over issues to bend things in her favor. Rising from my seat, I approached the window, allowing the quiet to settle in and speak for itself. Gazing out at the urban sprawl from my office perch, I inhaled deeply before speaking at last. "All right, we'll discuss this. But first, hear me out on all the things you avoided grasping." A subtle crease formed on Madison's brow, caught off guard by my resolve. "Over the past 3 years, I've covered every cost. You've held down a job for no longer than 6 months in a row. Your bills, my folks' needs, the rent you dodged, the groceries, outfits, getaways, it's all been on me. Yet you still expected me to bankroll your ceremony like my own existence meant nothing." Her gaze expanded briefly, though her expression held steady, as if scouting for leverage over me. "I only aimed for flawlessness," she murmured, attempting to ease the tension. "I figured you'd back me up." "This isn't regarding backing," I interrupted, steady yet unyielding. "It's concerning dignity and limits. I'm not your cash machine or lackey. Enough with the mind games. No more threats." She fell quiet, and in that instant I caught a flicker of realization, blended with shock and irritation. That glint empowered me. At last I was voicing decades of mistreatment without a trace of remorse. "Laura," she started, her eyes dropping, "I didn't realize, I never pictured you'd see it that way, that I'd feel taken advantage of." I pressed. "That I'd grow weary of placing your joy above my own." "Exactly, Madison. That's precisely how it hit me, and I'll never brush it aside again." Gradually, her features shifted. For the initial time, genuine remorse surfaced, tinged with apprehension. The reality she'd constructed, assuming I'd forever bail her out, was starting to fracture. "So, you won't assist with the ceremony?" she inquired softly, laced with resignation. "No," I stated with composure and certainty. "If it's your event to own, you'll need to figure out funding it solo, and Tyler ought to hear that straight. I'm done footing bills that aren't my own." She stood gradually from her seat, each motion underscoring the erosion of her entitlements. She met my eyes briefly, a mix of bitterness and reluctant acceptance lingering, before pivoting to exit. "And thanks for hearing me out. I added as she reached the door. "I suppose that's fair," she responded, avoiding my glance, and departed. With the door shutting behind her, solitude enveloped me. I drew in a profound breath, sensing a massive weight evaporate from my frame. It transcended finances. It encompassed prolonged dominance, scheming, and impositions. For the first occasion in ages, true respiration felt possible. That evening, I settled at my workspace, scribbling in my diary. Each entry reinforced my commitment. No longer would I permit exploitation or coercion, for my hours, resources, and serenity belonged solely to me. No one could seize them. As the entries flowed, a real grin spread across my lips. At long last, following endless concessions, Laura had claimed her liberty. The following morning brought an unprecedented ease. For the first stretch in years, I could structure my routine free from kin obligations or outbursts. Sipping my brew tranquilly in the kitchen as sunlight poured through the panes I'd funded and selected with care, I exhaled fully and reflected, "This belongs to me alone." I resolved to pursue something long delayed, arranging a modest getaway just for myself, no extravagance or validation required. All I craved was the liberty I'd toiled so hard to secure. Scanning spots by the shore, a locale for strolling shoeless, attuning to the waves, and embracing that the universe granted me nothing but regard and calm. While browsing choices, my cell buzzed. Tyler Dixon was calling. "Laura," he greeted, his voice lighter, "I needed to express gratitude, not merely for handling your relatives, but for awakening me. I've yielded excessively to Madison, and now I grasp true priorities." "That's heartening," I answered. "You've learned that affection doesn't demand forfeiting your existence to someone ignoring your limits." Following our exchange, Tyler transformed too. He established firm lines with Madison, showing her that maturity isn't a contest dominated by the most vocal. A quiet triumph washed over me. My choice hadn't just liberated me, it rippled positively to another. In the ensuing period, I recognized the need to reconstruct not just my inner world, but my surroundings as well. I refreshed the lounge walls with hues that sparked joy in me. I swapped out pieces, incorporated greenery and snapshots capturing my current self. A self-reliant, resilient, liberated individual. Every item within narrated tales of self-rule and deliberate picks. I re-engaged with my law work brimming with fresh vigor. Those seeking my counsel detected my vitality and assurance. I sensed greater, clearer, and more focused than before. I began earning praise for my efforts, and each bit of feedback reinforced that I'd built it all on my own, free from the validation of those who'd exploited my kindness in the past. One afternoon, strolling through town with my camera in hand, I stumbled upon a nearby art show. Pausing to admire the artwork, a wave of excitement washed over me. Bold hues, confident brushwork, tales shared boldly. Reflecting on my own journey and the hardships I'd overcome, a grin spread across my face. At last I could craft my own path, choosing the shades and depths without interference. I even reconnected with my grandmother, who turned into my safe haven and guide. Her steady encouragement showed me that even if some relatives clung to their distorted version of events, I could forge a fresh chapter, one centered on dignity, limits, and cherishing myself. Day by day, serenity grew within me. I mastered turning down requests without remorse, putting my well-being first, savoring the quiet in my home, and making the most of my downtime. No longer did my world spin on deceit and demands. Instead, it centered on my aspirations, decisions, and joy. Gradually, Laura discovered something priceless beyond any legacy or cash: her independence, her territory, and the strength to shape her future. For the first time in ages, gazing at the sunset through the window, I beamed without any lingering doubts, secure in the knowledge that no force could take away what I'd truly earned: my existence, my guidelines, and my complete tranquility. This caught me off guard, I thought, striving to stay composed while absorbing the news. I've reflected on all that went down, and it hit me that you might have capitalized on my goodwill. And maybe, Madison added deliberately, choosing her phrases with precision, I hope we can mend our bond. Kinship matters too much to let finances destroy it. So what's your plan? I replied, folding my arms. Tyler and I intend to repay you, she explained. Not in a lump sum, of course, but through installments. We'll also cover our wedding ourselves, nothing extravagant, just sensible. It seemed almost ideal, prompting me to suspect a hidden motive right away. What's the real angle, Madison? I pressed, watching her closely. Her features grew a bit tense. No strings attached, she assured me. I simply miss having my sibling around. Then why do you appear ready to request more? I challenged, bracing for the worst. She fidgeted with her bag's handle, a telltale sign I'd spotted long ago. Actually, Tyler's place is cramped for 4, and his rental agreement bans long-term visitors, so we wondered. And there it came, I anticipated, filling in the unspoken part. You'd like to return here. Just for a bit, she hastened to say, until we secure something lasting, and we'd contribute rent this go-around. I swear. I settled into my seat, scrutinizing her every expression. She came across as genuine, though Madison had mastered the art of feigned honesty whenever she needed a favor. What amount for rent? I inquired. Say $800 monthly, she suggested. My monthly mortgage hit $2,800 by itself, excluding bills, property taxes, coverage, and upkeep. $800 barely scratched a fourth of the true expenses, yet it beat the prior $500 proposal. And how extended would this short term last? I probed. No more than 6 months, she vowed, right up to the wedding and settling into our spot. What about the ceremony? I followed up. We're eyeing modest locations now. Perhaps $15,000 total, she answered. $15,000. I pondered, intrigued. Quite a sum for someone jobless, but progress from $28,000. Madison, what makes me believe you now? I questioned gravely. I've grown from my mistakes, she insisted, squirming a touch. I get that I messed up earlier. Which mistake taught you what, precisely? I wondered, arching a brow. She shifted restlessly, averting her gaze. That bonds with loved ones outweighed dollars, she murmured. That missed the mark. A true takeaway would have been that grown-ups must sustain themselves and share costs equitably. Yet Madison framed it as cash clashing with kinship, not honor or personal space. I value the regret you expressed, I noted thoughtfully. Still, I'm not prepared to revisit the living arrangement. Her poised front slipped further. Laura, come on. Tyler Dixon's set to evict us as well. We lack options. What of your folks? I countered. They've rented a unit, a tiny studio, she admitted. It's tight for just the 2 of them, never mind adding us. That clicked for me then. My parents had landed their own setup, likely modest and fitting their needs. Well done on their part. Madison, at 28 with a degree under your belt, you could land employment, build savings, and lease a place independently, like countless adults nationwide. But opportunities are scarce, and many roles demand prior work history I lack, since I've been unemployed. She mentioned aiding the household, that's what she claimed. That line about aiding the household stuck out. 3 years without a job turned into supposed family duty. You've been jobless because you decided against working, I shot back. That's not right. Somebody needed to look after Mom and Dad, she protested desperately. What kind of help did they require? I pressed steadily. Dad's not impaired, and Mom can handle herself just fine. Madison's mouth opened and shut, but no solid response emerged. The reality was straightforward. My parents required monetary backing, which I'd supplied while Madison reaped the rewards without pitching in. Listen, she shifted gears. Tyler's beginning to probe about finances and duties. If I don't fix this quickly, he could end the engagement. There it lay. The remorse wasn't from any real insight. It stemmed from panic. Her fallback was fading, and Madison was feeling the squeeze. Perhaps that would benefit you both, I suggested evenly, her eyes flaring wide suddenly. How dare you suggest that? I adore Tyler, she burst out. Do you truly adore him? I inquired. Or is it merely the notion of matrimony and letting someone else handle your money woes? That's an awful accusation, she responded, her tone quivering. Madison, what do you contribute to this partnership other than anticipating Tyler to foot all the bills? I stated, letting the query linger. I watched her hunt for a reply, yet it eluded her. At last, in a faint whisper, she admitted, I offer affection. And that's when I realized she was confronting the facts. Affection can't excuse recklessness or disregard. Affection, I stated, folding my arms. Affection won't settle accounts, Madison. It won't earn esteem or repay the efforts others invested in you. She went quiet, choking back her retorts. Her gaze, once brimming with assurance and haughtiness, now glistened with uncertainty. I sensed she was beginning to comprehend, if just a bit, that existence doesn't involve others fixing every issue for you. All right, she murmured softly in the end. Perhaps I erred. Not perhaps, Madison. You erred for 3 full years. You existed without accountability, spending my funds, residing in my home, testing my tolerance, and now you seek re-entry like it never occurred. My tone stayed steady, composed, yet commanding. She dropped her eyes, fidgeting anxiously with her fingers. I observed her weighing each phrase, each fallout from her choices. Consider this, I went on. If you're aiming to return, it'll follow strict terms. No handouts, no assumptions on my resources, no sentimental ploys. All costs must be equitable, and all conduct must demonstrate regard. Madison lifted her face and met my stare, startled and somewhat alarmed. So, does that allow me to remain? She ventured warily. It signifies that should you choose to remain, you'll act as a mature individual, I clarified. Timely rent, sharing in the bills, honoring my area and limits, and the nuptials. You and Tyler cover your ceremony expenses. I won't contribute a penny more. Understood, she breathed out, nearly gasping. I believe I can manage that. Are you certain? I demanded resolutely, since there'll be no further leniency this round. No additional pretexts, no complaints, no scheming. Each deed carries repercussions. She inclined her head gradually, inhaling profoundly. For the initial time, I spotted a glimmer of accountability, a recognition of her past deeds and the shifts required. Then I added, easing my delivery a touch, we might attempt this anew, but keep in mind it's not solely regarding funds or ceremonies. It's centered on esteem, limits, and confidence. Each gets reconstructed gradually. Madison shut her eyes and exhaled. For an instant, it appeared she'd absorbed the gravity of her errors. Thanks, Laura, she uttered shakily. I won't overlook it. You'd better not, I countered, since I haven't forgotten the events, and I refuse to permit a repeat. The remainder of the day involved outlining the fresh arrangement specifics. Madison pledged to seek employment and set aside funds for the wedding. Tyler Dixon consented to discuss fiscal duty with her. I recorded it all, from dues to household guidelines. At last, a tangible, straightforward, and balanced strategy existed. As she departed my workspace that evening, I detected a shift. The overconfidence had yielded to modesty, though tentative. It wasn't flawless, nor did I anticipate perfection, yet it marked an initial move. For the first occasion in ages, I believed the balance of fairness in my residence was tilting favorably. That evening, shutting my office entrance and gazing at my image in the glass, I offered a faint grin. I'd endured the most intense familial tempest of my existence. I'd established limits, safeguarded my domain, and imparted to Madison a vital insight that she'd need time to absorb, but one she ultimately had to confront. And crucially, for the first time, I sensed my existence belonged to me once more. Love is it's not sufficient for a real marriage. True connection demands collaboration, joint duties, and equal regard. The arrangement you're proposing to Tyler mirrors precisely what you extended to me, the chance to fund your existence in exchange for blame and coercion. Madison sprang to her feet suddenly, her remaining poise crumbling at last. You've turned icy, Laura. Prosperity has chilled your heart. No, I answered softly. Establishing limits has actually improved my well-being. She stormed out of my office in tears, and that familiar twist of remorse stirred in my gut. Yet this time, I identified it clearly for its true nature: indoctrination. Decades of ingrained habits that left me accountable for everyone else's feelings, regardless of whether those reactions stemmed from their personal choices. Later that evening, I reached out to Dr. Chen. "How are you holding up after that talk?" she inquired. Remorseful yet resolute, I confessed. I saw through her tactics completely, and I refused to play along. "That's progress," she noted. "Shifting lifelong habits doesn't often feel pleasant. It demands real effort." She appeared utterly adrift as she departed. Madison is adrift, but Laura, it's not your job to guide her back. That's her journey to undertake. She hit the mark. Still, it pained me to witness my sibling in such turmoil. The shift now lay in my awareness of the divide between support and indulgence. Over the ensuing weeks, snippets of news filtered through family chatter. Madison and Tyler Dixon had split. She'd bunked with a buddy. My folks were managing in their tiny apartment. Dad had picked up part-time shifts at a tool shop. Mom handled remote data tasks. The household tale had shifted once more. Suddenly, I was cast as the thriving sibling who deserted her kin during their darkest hour, the one prioritizing wealth over affection, ambition over bonds, self-interest over devotion. A year prior, I might have swallowed that script, but counseling equipped me to spot the deceit. Our clan lore insisted that demanding simple dignity in my space equated to egoism, that holding grown-ups to self-sufficiency was heartless, that denying funding for others' aspirations amounted to desertion. I rejected it all now. Yet the real challenge to my resolve arrived 6 months on, at 2:00 a.m., with Madison's tearful call. "Laura, I require assistance." I bolted upright, fully awake in an instant. "What happened? Are you injured?" "I'm expecting," she choked out amid the cries. The revelation struck like a gut blow. Unemployed and alone, Madison was about to bring a child into the world. "Are you certain?" I pressed. "I used 3 kits. I visited the health center. It's definite." "Who's the dad?" "Some fellow from a nightclub. I don't even possess his legitimate contact." My chest ached for her plight. This was the precise sort of upheaval our family excelled at creating, the variety that called for swift intervention from an outsider. "What kind of aid do you want?" I queried, anticipating her reply. "Raising a child is beyond my means, Laura. I struggle just to eat. I need funds for the physician. I need housing suitable for an infant. I simply require support." There it stood. The dire situation that would validate it all, the predicament that would paint me as the antagonist should I fail to swoop in. But for the first time, I drew a steady breath and recalled my lessons. Offering aid doesn't entail erasing yourself through endless sacrifice. On this occasion, I couldn't perpetuate the bailout cycle that rendered my relatives reliant on me. It wasn't ego, it was self-preservation and imparting limits. Painful as that might be. I inhaled deeply and stated evenly, "Madison, I intend to assist you." "Yes, but differently from past times. I won't assume control of your circumstances or burdens. Now, boundaries are essential." "Boundaries," she wailed. "But this involves a child I can't manage solo." "Precisely," I concurred. "A child brings obligations. I can't shoulder it all anymore as if everything's fine. You'll need to decide paths, secure employment, budget wisely, and arrange lodging. I can cover essentials like health expenses and startup necessities, but the balance falls to you." She stared at me, eyes widened in terror, as though her reality was collapsing, and indeed it was. But I grasped a truth she hadn't yet. Authentic existence offers no mercy for unpreparedness or absent limits. And what of Tyler? I inquired. Does he intend to step up? No, she whispered shakily. He's clueless on how to proceed. I exhaled heavily. Naturally, I'd always been the fixer, even for fellow grown-ups' messes. Not anymore. This round, I'd define the terms and adhere to them. All right, I continued. I'll cover the pressing items. Doctor visits, starter supplies like diapers, a month's groceries, but you'll seek work and independent shelter. No crashing at my place. No anticipating full financial coverage from me. Got it. Madison dipped her head gradually, tears persisting, yet a spark of realization dawned. I sensed she was beginning to comprehend that the universe granted no entitlements, that reliance wasn't rooted in affection, safeguarding, or kinship. It was a habit she'd mastered how to manipulate. "Laura," she uttered amid sobs, "are you truly capable of this without any remorse?" "Absolutely," I responded with resolve. "This time, my actions stem from self-respect and the goal of guiding you toward accountable living, not from shame or worry that you'll resent me." Time went by, and Madison started seeking employment while mapping out her future. It proved challenging. Interviews were disheartening, and early efforts fell short. Yet for the initial occasion, she tackled issues independently. I offered backing, but refrained from playing the hero. Tyler Dixon, too, started grasping the truth. He realized that affection can't substitute for duty, and a union can't endure on mere aspirations and outside pressures alone. Gradually, he assumed some financial obligations, helping Madison recognize that relying on others to fund your existence isn't affection or achievement. In the midst of it all, I experienced a sensation absent for ages: serenity and sharpness. I rested soundly, labored without disruption, and savored my home along with my accomplishments. Gone were the shouts, the coercion, the shame masked as familial obligation. For the first instance, I viewed my existence with defined limits and free from dread. Though Madison had plenty to grasp regarding self-reliance and accountability, I finally glimpsed her capacity for development. I couldn't shield her from every hardship, but I could permit her to rise independently. And that sufficed, since true care isn't about handling all tasks for someone else. It's about instructing, bolstering, and granting room for each to master their path. My sibling, expecting a child, isolated, frantic, required her accomplished sister to rush to her aid. Just a year prior, I'd have dashed to assist right away. I'd have covered all costs, stood by during her gestation, and made sure she wanted for nothing. I'd have persuaded myself that such was the essence of family. "Madison, I'm truly sorry you're facing this," I stated in a steady yet composed tone. "Would you like my assistance?" The query lingered like a pathway I might traverse or destroy. I recognized I couldn't revert to familiar ruts this time. "I can assist in exploring aids," I pressed on. "Medicaid for maternity health, WIC for meal support, shelters for solo parents. Systems exist to lend a hand. That's not the kind of aid I seek," she wept, and I understood. "I get it," I acknowledged. "However, Madison, choices exist. Outlets for aid, assistance programs, networks to uphold you. You needn't face it solo, yet I can't serve as your only pillar." The quiet from her side hit hard. "So that's your stance," she murmured. "Your flesh and blood is with child and terrified, and you'll just leave me behind." "I'm not forsaking you, Madison," I asserted steadily. "I'm declining to foster your dependency. There's a distinction between aiding and salvaging." She disconnected without further words. Sleep evaded me that evening. I gazed at the overhead, second-guessing it all. Had I grown callous? Was I deserting my kin at her frailest? I'd emphasized limits so intensely that empathy had faded. After pondering, clarity emerged. Empathy doesn't require endangering my fiscal stability or mental health. Aid doesn't equate to shouldering full accountability for another's choices. I reached out to Dr. Chen for an urgent consult. Sensing hesitation in you, she noted once I'd shared the details of Madison's outreach. "Aren't I supposed to?" I queried. "She's expecting and isolated." "Indeed, she's on her own and must decide her path forward. You can back her sans pulling her from her duties." "But suppose it unravels," I voiced anxiously. "What if she falters under the weight?" "Laura, what if she thrives?" she countered serenely. "What if navigating her turmoil head-on is precisely the push Madison requires for genuine growth?" It stung to accept, yet Dr. Chen spoke truth. Each rescue from her choice's fallout had blocked her from confronting tough spots. I'd sustained her reliance rather than fostering autonomy. That very day, I took an unprecedented step. I delved into every aid option for expectant women like Madison. Health coverage initiatives, nourishment aid, lodging support, vocational prep, child-rearing workshops. I assembled it all into a thorough file and sent it her way with a note. "I trust your strength to navigate this. These are resources to propel you ahead." No response came. Over the ensuing period, updates trickled in via relatives. Madison had secured Medicaid and WIC. She'd relocated to interim quarters for expectant mothers. She even landed a flexible role at a daycare, allowing her to include the infant. She coped, imperfectly, amid struggles. But she pressed on. My folks, in parallel, were adapting to this shifted landscape. Father's temporary gig turned into a permanent position once his supervisor spotted his valuable background. Mother realized she actually liked inputting data and started thinking about returning to classes for some IT skills. They were getting their own affairs in order, too. The get-togethers that my grandma mentioned to me had shrunk in size, grown calmer with far less turmoil, reduced money troubles, and deeper talks about everyday experiences rather than constant disasters. I didn't get invitations to those events, and that stung. Yet they also stopped expecting me to foot the bill, plan everything, or sort out issues that weren't my responsibility. I was figuring out how to cope with the ache without letting it disrupt my calm. At last, I truly valued the room I'd carved out for my personal world. For the first time, I grasped that drawing lines doesn't erode affection or empathy. It merely safeguards your existence while equipping others with the means to stand on their own. And that, beyond any cash or self-denial, represented genuine liberation. The ensuing months brought genuine transformation. Madison was tackling her routine one stage at a time. Perfection was elusive. Occasionally, she'd fall behind on her housing contributions. The combo of her casual work and pregnancy prep sometimes left her swamped, yet she confronted each challenge solo. I stayed out of the fixes, and for the first time, she was stepping up with authentic accountability. I got indirect news via texts from her buddy, info filtering through my grandma, or brief chats from Tyler Dixon. Every update served as proof that my choice was spot on, despite the ongoing pain of watching her navigate difficulties. "Laura," Tyler told me one day, "she's truly getting the hang of managing stuff now, unlike the past when it all hinged on you." I managed a grin, tinged with sorrow. Indeed, she was pulling it off. Madison was maturing amid tough wake-up calls, absorbing lessons I'd picked up ages ago. In the meantime, my folks were evolving as well. Dad quit griping over minor things, and Mom even took pleasure in her clerical duties. It wasn't an ideal setup, but each person was settling into their role without requiring my constant self-offering. One afternoon, a note arrived from Madison. "Laura, thanks for the tips you shared. I'm starting to get how to deal with this. I realize I can't rely on you forever." It lacked any remorse or ploy to sway me. It signaled her seizing control of her path. For the first time, pride swelled in me for her efforts, not for my role in patching things up. On my end, I pieced together my regular habits anew. Work remained intense, but my hours and vitality belonged entirely to me now. I could rest soundly, dine without stress, tidy my space, and focus on self-nurturing free of remorse. I even picked up pursuits I'd ignored for years: yoga sessions, a photo workshop, quality time with pals unburdened by messy kin issues. Each little step affirmed that establishing limits wasn't egoism, but essential preservation and nurturing. Half a year went by. Madison welcomed a robust newborn. The process was grueling. Sleepless evenings, bouts of anxiety, and sobs marked it. But she powered through sans my intervention. Tyler Dixon also started grasping the household patterns. Though friction lingered, he figured out how to sidestep my relatives' pressures. My parents, witnessing their girls handle independence, came to honor the limits I'd set. The daily pleas for funds ceased. The guilt-tripping tactics ended. They'd realized I wasn't their perpetual rescuer anymore. Though tough on them, they were coming to terms with moving forward absent my crisis funding. My grandma, true to form, imparted a key insight. "Sweetie, you handled it right. You supported when it counted, but you also instilled duty. That's real caring." And she nailed it. My devotion to kin didn't require wrecking my own path or letting them exploit me. Madison was mastering existence, confronting truths, and parenting without total reliance on me. My parents were carving niches sans pulling me under, and I was at last serene. I discovered that defining borders doesn't lessen fondness. It simply renders it more balanced. That occasionally the optimal aid isn't fixing someone's world for them, but handing over the resources for them to manage it independently. That esteem and duty form the bedrock of enduring bonds, and that my inner tranquility is invaluable. That was the profound insight that eluded me for years. Affection doesn't invariably demand total surrender. At times, it involves releasing, watching, and permitting growth in others as you at last inhale deeply, thrive, and craft your joy. A year post my firm stance, I ran into Tyler Dixon at a city center cafe. He wasn't the strained Tyler from the recent family storms. He appeared at ease, composed, nearly unburdened, like he was drawing breath freely for the very first time, free from the burden of Madison's demands. "Laura," he said, stepping up to my table a bit hesitantly, "how have you been?" "Fine," I answered, offering a small smile. "You seem fantastic," he noted. There was real honesty in his words, unlike the anxious edge he'd had when talking about things with Madison. "Thanks. I really do feel amazing," I responded, struck by how true that was to my current situation. "I wanted to thank you for," he began, arching a brow as though hunting for the perfect phrasing. "For what?" I inquired, intrigued. "For that talk we shared on setting limits. It transformed everything for me," he clarified. "I saw that I was on the verge of wedding a woman who wanted me fixing all her issues without her lifting a finger toward any fixes. That's no true collaboration, Laura. It's not equality. It's lacking shared regard." He spoke with such insight that it brought a pleased grin to my face. Dating anyone these days? I wondered aloud, truly curious. "Yeah, as a matter of fact," he confirmed. "A woman who puts in equal effort, covers her own expenses, and sees me as an equal, not an ATM." I beamed, truly glad for him. It was heartening to witness Tyler grasping the right way connections ought to work. "That seems perfect," I remarked. "Oh, and Madison's little one is adorable. She shares pics now and then." My spirits dipped slightly. I hadn't glimpsed images of my niece or nephew. I didn't even know the child's gender. Yet Tyler's offhand remark suggested Madison was holding up well, keeping up her routine and online activity. "Is she doing all right?" I pressed, concern lingering despite it all. "From what I gather, she is," he assured. "She's figuring out how to juggle it all. The kid appears thriving and content." After Tyler departed, I lingered at the cafe table for quite a while, pondering choices and their outcomes. My choice to establish limits had exacted a toll: shattered ties, family events I'd skipped, a niece or nephew I may never truly connect with. Yet it also delivered outcomes I cherished profoundly. A level of financial stability I'd never experienced, tranquility in my living space, bonds rooted in equal esteem rather than fiscal reliance, and a self-value that no longer hinged on my utility to anyone. I headed home calmly. I prepared a solo meal and curled up for a film picked solely by me, ignoring others' preferences. My cell stayed silent, no kin crises buzzing in. Nobody was begging me to fix their messes or fund their aspirations. For the first time as an adult, I existed for my own sake, not chasing validation from the crowd. Sure, loneliness crept in at times. Absolutely, I yearned for those family moments, chaos included. But this existence felt genuine in a manner my old one never did. Each act of self-reliance, every serene evening, every solo call reinforced my hard-won insight. Real affection isn't about forfeiting your existence to patch up others' shortcomings. If this tale strikes a chord, keep in mind that drawing lines isn't self-centered. Often the kindest support for your loved ones is declining to fuel their destructive patterns. You can cherish folks without bankrolling their habits. You can back them up without vanishing into the effort. A genuine clan cheers your wins. It doesn't merely profit off them. I'm Laura Ashworth, 31, and I've at last discerned the gap between exploitation and genuine care. That realization claimed bonds I believed unbreakable, but it gifted me an existence I never realized I merited. At times, the toughest limits to draw are with those closest to your heart, and such limits unlock your liberty, serenity, and joy. Enjoy the tale. And from which spot are you tuning in? Drop by in the comments. If the story clicked for you, show some love with a super thanks to help me craft more like it. Thanks a ton for your kind backing. Can't wait for your thoughts below. Check the screen for 2 fresh life tales I totally endorse. Tons more awaits on my channel. Hit subscribe, won't you? Catch you in the next one. With warmth and appreciation.